Hey there.
What's happening, my friend?
How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. How are you? What's
I'm
happening?
I'm good. I'm excited. British horror is continuing.
UK horror keeps going.
It does. All Hammer all the time.
It's an endless diversion. It
Yes.
really is.
We should have called it Hammer horror because it's really
It really. I guess they're all. I mean, I know our last one is Hammer. What is next week's
next
film?
week is The Curse of the Werewolf, which is
Also Hammer.
also Hammer.
It's Hammer
And
time.
yeah, that's right. There you go. Except we're not wearing the silly pants.
It's UK horror goes really deep, and it's not just Hammer. Hammer was like a big part of it all, but there's some interesting other outliers.
Other
I
stuff.
came across this kind of started because I came across a really interesting article at the beginning of lockdown. Edgar Wright, the filmmaker, was talking about being friends with people like Marty Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino, and what that's
Right.
like. And what that's like is Marty Scorsese emails you and says, "Hey, do you know a lot about British horror? You're British." And he goes, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "Would you like to see my list?" And Scorsese sent him his top 50, not just like these are 50 films I know that were made in England. These are my 50 favorite sci-fi horror themed action noir films that you've never heard of.
Okay.
Now, Edgar Wright is from England. He didn't know half of these movies. So I got that list, and apparently
How did you get the list?
it was
Are you
published online.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you and
I am
Edgar
not
were
connected.
buds.
No, I don't have anybody calling me up with these lists except I have to seek it out. Apparently Tarantino was in on this thing too, and so they all started watching these films and talking to each other on podcasts about them and how far down the list they'd gotten and stuff. And I got through maybe 10 of them. Great stuff, but it was really eye opening. And Hammer, I don't even there weren't that many Hammer movies or classic vampire movies on the list at all.
Okay. Well, we get to do stuff like that too. We trade lists with other people, but they're like Edgar Wright and Scorsese and Tarantino, they
Yeah,
trade lists with people at
you
their
trade
level.
you trade lists with Lou Scorsese
Yeah, and, you
and
know,
Mickey Wright and
yeah, yeah, and,
Johnny Tarantino.
yeah, Johnny Tarantino. Yeah, exactly.
Same
We
thing.
we trade lists with people on our level.
Yeah, this was more just to kind of say how deep the well goes here. We're just skimming the surface this
Yeah,
month.
okay. Um, but, no, this is fun because I have not been I have not dived into this barrel, of,
It's a
fish
it's a
or
big
monkeys
barrel,
or whatever you wanna call it
big
before.
bucket of fish and chips. It's big.
Yeah, a fine kettle of fish and chips
Yes.
you've gotten us into this time. What are you watching this week? Anything other than what we had to watch for this, fabulous festival of horror?
Been a little on the busy side, must admit. Been a little busy. Have not had a lot of time for anything but the hammer. We saw something, but it didn't make an impression on me, clearly.
Okay.
How about yourself?
Well, no matter how busy I am, I tend to watch something else at night before going to bed just because I get to the point where I can't stare at the computer or look at the prices of
Sure. Oh, I do
corn
that too.
anymore.
Yeah.
I started watching well, you know me. You know that I am a huge fan of the series detective, lone law guy
Yeah,
genre.
that's your thing. It's your jam.
That is my thing. So, a huge fan of Jack Reacher for years and years, from the very beginning, been reading that, and was, a little disappointed in the casting of the movie. N to I cast no aspersions on Tom Cruise or his talent or his stardom, um, but he's not 6'5". And he doesn't walk into a bar or a town or a diner and cause everybody to say, okay, I better might be in trouble. Um, and they finally cast somebody as Jack Reacher who is um, impressive to say the least. And
He's a big man.
he's a
I
very
mean,
big,
he's a good actor. He's really good in the show, but you gotta say, like, the first thing you think is like, "Holy Moses, this guy
yeah.
is a big man."
And they do a great job introducing Reacher in the series in that really the first time we see him is a scene where a punky guy is abusing his girlfriend, and Reacher doesn't do anything except stand there and look at the guy, and the guy goes all the way from, "What the hell are you looking at?" to, "I'm sorry, I know, I have to change, I'll try to do better," with Reacher not doing anything whatsoever.
He just looks at him.
He just looks at him. And so that made me very happy. So I've been binging that.
The only thing we saw the pilot and enjoyed it a lot. We'll watch more. The only thing I miss, frankly, for that I will never get in the show is Werner Herzog. I miss having Werner Herzog as part of the Jack Reacher mythology. I know he died in the first movie, but
Was Werner Herzog in the first film?
yes, I believe so. I
See,
believe he.
I barely even remember the
I
movie.
think he is the main bad guy from the first Jack Reacher movie.
Oh, okay. That's how much of an impression that first Jack Reacher movie made on me. What can I tell you? They're also doing something really interesting, I think, with Reacher's eyes in the movie. And I don't think it's CGI, but I think they're lighting him in a way that there is whatever key light they're using on him, whatever light they're using on him is reflecting right in the center of his pupils almost all the time. So it makes him look steely and inaccessible, and a little scary looking. And I don't think it's CGI. I think they're just getting a light in there, almost like a ring light, but it doesn't do that ring thing that's so annoying in self-tape sometimes.
Well, when I have the chance to stare longingly into his eyes,
Not longingly,
I will see, and I will have the chance to see.
not longingly. And the young woman who is playing opposite him as Roscoe the cop is doing a really spectacular job, I
She's
think.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the show. The show's really it's got me watch it'll have me watching another one, which is not an easy thing to do in this house.
Now you haven't read the whole thing, but Amelia's a big fan, right, of
Yeah,
Reacher?
Amelia, you got Amelia hooked on it, and I've dipped in and out, and I enjoy it. I don't think it's a thing I can stick with, for long chunks. I feel like for me, maybe it's a little unhealthy. I feel like it maybe triggers some terrible masculine issues that
Okay.
I better not, poke the hornet's nest too much, or I'll sit around wishing I was just this giant man that could do anything that he wanted because he was just so damn big.
Right.
It's
Well,
probably
I'm
not.
waiting for somebody to step up and tackle the John Sanford series, which is the Lucas Davenport cop novels that take place in Minneapolis, St. Paul. 'Cause there's about 30 of those,
They've
and
never tried to move any kind of spin-off or
I
movie on
think
them.
there have been no films about Lucas Davenport or Virgil Flowers, and I'd like to see somebody pull those off. But we've wandered far afield from our topic tonight, um, which is it's interesting that the title of the movie is Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, and Frankenstein is never destroyed ever. There's any idea how many Frankenstein movies there are?
There's hundreds of them.
I
I
think
don't know.
I think there's more Frankenstein movies than anything else.
Is that it could
I
be
mean,
true. I actually
can you
never
think
I
of
looked it up, but
any other movie of any kind where they've made that many? I mean, there's over 50 listed on IMDb with Frankenstein in them. and we're just talking movies, and then if you start getting into episodes of TV shows, it's in the hundred. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Dracula gives him a run for the money.
Yeah, probably.
He's a very look. He's a well-known character. He's been around for a long time.
He's been around for a long time, and also, his genesis, the genesis of Frankenstein going starting with the novel, obviously, Frankenstein, or isn't the subtitle Modern Prometheus or something like that? Um, it's so the themes in it of man trying to play God and the relationship between man and his creator are actually, we need to just talk about British horror movies. This nobody wants to hear about, an
Well,
academic treatise on the Frankenstein legend.
well, okay. They may. You were making a point. Maybe you're making a very interesting point. I don't know.
Well, it taps into something, that this conflict of man wanting to be God and man wanting to create something, and then when Victor Frankenstein creates the monster, and there's that relationship between the imperfect man, which is the monster that he creates, and his creator, and why did you make me, and the way that mirrors man's relationship to our supposed creator. It's just, there's so much material there to dig into.
There's a ton, and it also because it is also science fiction, and I
Mhm.
think probably you know your son, my nephew, might argue whether it's actually science fiction or science fantasy. I think when it was written and originally, it was as close to science fiction, as she could get it. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
the idea of using electricity to reanimate something, the idea of vivisection was a big problem and a big issue during the time that she wrote that book.
right,
And it was a big
and
political thing, and so I think it was very very current at the time, and it struck a lot of chords. And what's amazing about it is how it's not just like box office that has driven him to be in 50 movies. It's there's something, like you say, about the story that's incredibly pertinent to modern day. It's kept growing and expanding, and the iterations of the story have changed and kept up with the times in a way that, like, the Dracula myth has kind of gone backwards into more romance and fantasy. This has really consistently been like the story of our modern age.
well, and the themes continue even in movies like in things like I, Robot. You could
Yeah,
argue the relationship between Hal and Dave in 2001.
yeah,
There's our creation being something that we ultimately can't control.
right. Well, it's in Alien, and it's in Blade Runner, and it's in a lot of more modern myths and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
The question is whether any of that, deep, rich, evocative philosophy entered into the Hammer versions of these stories. And I think what's interesting about it is that these movies, to me, feel like they were clearly made by people that deeply understood these things, literate, smart people
and didn't care
that
at
were on a
all.
holiday from all of that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They were
Well,
taking a bus holiday.
yeah, they
Yeah.
depart in this movie in significant ways from that myth. Um, so let's give, do you wanna give the little recap of what we're dealing
Yeah,
with here?
sure. We got Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed from 1969, directed by Terrence Fisher. It is a Frankenstein film, by which we really mean Dr. Frankenstein, as he really is. It's not the monster, which was the classic, Boris Karloff creation. They couldn't use any of those designs in the Hammer movies. They were actually kind of looking for trouble in a way with Universal Studios when they made the first one, but it was public domain as a story. They just couldn't use anything remotely like that makeup job they did on Boris Karloff. Anyway, this story centers around Dr. Frankenstein. We get the feeling about 20 years after the events of the book, right?
Yes.
Of the novel. And he has been on the run, hated by all of Europe, despised, kind of a doctoral Bernie Madoff character. People just don't like him around.
I love that. Yeah.
And he finds himself back in, in town under an assumed name, and he is still working on his experiments, living in rental apartments and finding little places to live and do his experiments. He falls into a situation where he's renting a flat from a young woman whose mother is sick, and her fiance is a doctor at the local mental hospital, and he has been getting her sick mother illegal drugs to help her. He's doing a good thing, but he's breaking the law to do it, and he's jeopardizing his career.
Well,
And
he's selling the illegal drugs, the cocaine, in order to pay for the mother's
that's
care.
right. I thought it
Yeah.
was that he needed the drugs for her to actually administer to her that he
No,
couldn't afford.
it's just very expensive to care for her.
That's right, because it's actually cocaine. That's right. I
Yeah,
forget.
it's
He drops.
cocaine.
This is a Frankenstein movie in which an 8-ball of cocaine is dropped on a doorstep.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, this young couple is struggling with this situation, and in comes Baron von Frankenstein looking for a new apartment, and he gets the sublet, he gets the place, and he sets up shop, and immediately finds out the dirt on this couple. And since he needs access to the mental institution for brains, as you do, he blackmails this young man to enlist his help to get a brain from the mental institute. Not just any brain, though. Whose brain?
The brain of his former partner, who went mad working on the experiments they were working on, but also has the secret that Baron von Frankenstein needs in order to succeed as his experiments. So he's going to transplant the crazy man's brain into another body and cure him so that he can get the secret formula. And things go amok.
They are mucky. Yeah, they get very mucky.
They don't go well. There is I quibble with some of the science in the movie.
Do you?
And
wow.
I do, and we'll get to it. I have
this was 1967 or 1969. Give them a break.
No, there are leaps I am willing to take. I'm willing to go with you on your fictional fantastical voyage. But as you go down that fictional fantastical voyage, you better stick to your own darn rules that you create. And I have some quibbles with. I'll point them out later.
Yeah.
But I had a tremendous amount of fun watching this movie.
This is a surprise one. This would surprise me.
Well, let's start with Peter Cushing as Baron Victor, as he pronounces it, Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yeah.
He says it correct. He says it the Gene Wilder way.
Yes. He's a professional. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so much fun watching him after seeing him in The Brides of Dracula.
Isn't it?
Watching him play somebody just
irredeemably bad. He's one of the worst dudes in a movie. And the fact that he can play, you've hit on something great. The fact to me that he can play a Van Helsing that is like an angelic character, somebody who is good through and through,
and just
kind and heroic and gentlemanly, and you wouldn't think of him behaving poorly,
no,
unless you're a vampire. To cut to this where he is just a raving lunatic, like maniacally evil.
Yeah,
horrible man, and plays so believably into that. So you're starting to get a little bit of the Peter Cushing bug, huh? You're starting to see.
Oh yeah, I thought he was terrific.
He's great.
He's great. His physicality is spectacular. his willingness to kill anybody who gets in his way.
Yeah, yeah.
But, it's interesting, they still squeeze this thing in there of that he's doing it for a nobler cause.
Well, yeah, I mean, I f I guess in this movie, I felt like that voice was coming from him, like, that was him constantly saying, like, "It's for the science, and it's for
Yes.
mankind and progression," but, you know, there there's a line we'll get to that is my favorite line ever now. It's my I'm going to make it my "Fetch me the grub worms."
Fetch me the grub worm.
Yeah, which typifies, I don't know, to me, his take on all of it and his sense of humor, and what's so great about this movie.
Okay, and what is this line?
Oh, well, this line comes later in the late in the movie where he's surprised by the wife of the brain transplant victim of the new monster
Yes.
at his door, who recognized him in the street from the
Yes.
old days. And he thinks quickly on his feet and he invites her in immediately and says, "I've actually done something for you. I've saved your husband. I rescued him from the mental institution and I made him sane again." He doesn't mention, there might be one or two things a little funny about him now, but he kind of calms her down. And she's about to leave, and he goes, "But you there's just one thing." And she's like, "What?" He goes, "You can't say any of this to people. You can't tell anybody about this because I have seriously broken the law." And he laughs when he says it.
Yeah.
So it's so funny. To
Um,
say the least, I have broken the law.
seriously broken the law. Murdering people, maybe, perhaps.
Burying them in the backyard. He sexually assaults people. I mean, he's just a horrible person.
Well, so some of the things that I just loved about this movie that I wanna talk about are, well, first of all, the beheading at the beginning.
That's how
He
it starts.
It starts with him beheading somebody because he needs a brain. That's how we're introduced to the wonderful Baron von Frankenstein. Great blood spatter, that hammer red. I
Yeah.
actually think that should be a color, at the hardware store. You should be able to go in there
Yeah.
and ask them,
Hammer
"What
red.
what color do you want? Scarlet? Strawberry? No, I think I'd like hammer red."
In the makeup world, I think that is a thing people say.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a particular kind of red, and he's being so quiet at the beginning. His little dainty Dr. Frankenstein comes on dainty little feet to chop your head off. And then he's got this great they do this great twist at the beginning where when we finally see him, we just see his feet through the whole first murder, chopping the guy's head off. And then we finally see him, and it's this horrible, disfigured, uh, acid burned, bald, horrible face. And I thought, oh my god, that's where they're going with Frankenstein in this movie. I couldn't believe it. And then it's a Mission Impossible stripping off of
Yes.
that face, and you realize, "Oh my gosh, it's just a disguise."
Yeah.
But it's such a brilliant thing because it's like, this is what he really is. Like, they show us his true face
Oh, that's true. That's really smart.
before we
Yeah.
see the elegant, classy
Yeah.
Peter Cushing face.
That's really smart. That's the good thing to notice. Wow. Yeah. And also how they also, you assume that's the Frankenstein monster. You're
Yes.
kind of assuming that he's trained the monster to go kill for him at this point,
Right.
and that he's kind of like just like his little buddy who he takes all over Europe, but it's not.
No. No, it's just him. They also have this great jump cut from "Oh, you'll find it very quiet here." Smash cut to somebody screaming after
Yes.
discovering one of the bodies,
Yes. Yeah.
um, which actually got
or are they screaming because it's a Spider Girl in the mental institution?
oh, that's what it is. It's
Yeah,
her
it's
in the yeah,
there's a poor woman in the mental hospital who is convinced that spiders attack her and crawl
right.
on her skin, and she's plays a pivotal role in the movie, and her screaming, she has fits where she thinks that this is happening, and that plays a pivotal role
Right.
in the most interesting thing to me about the movie, in that section, there's a long section in the middle. Did I interrupt you though? I didn't mean to. You were
No,
about to.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
I got a really strong, like, this felt a little bit almost like the Rogue One of Frankenstein movies.
Uh-huh.
You know Rogue One? Did you see
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one?
it's an origin story.
Well, it's actually not. It's a sidebar.
Right,
It's not actually got anything to do with the story, but it's kind of like a day in the life of Dr. Frankenstein. Like, this is like one of his cases, and so the whole middle section turns into like a heist movie where he and this doctor he's blackmailing have to break into the mental institution, and they spend so much time on that in the middle of the movie of like planning it and getting the guy and then the whole thing that it's turns into like a heist thing, which I thought was a great way to take, like, a great, just very modern way to kind of like take this old story about Baron von Frankenstein into just a new place where the plot didn't have to be about the monster anymore
right.
or him or any
Mm.
of it. It was just a completely new set of rules for a while. And then it kind of remains that way. It takes some surprising turns, I thought.
Yeah,
The end, like, last quarter of it or third turning into a movie like a weird Ionesco two-hander between the wife of the doc, like two people that aren't really main characters, and they're
right, the head swap guy and his
and
wife.
his wife, and
Yeah.
they end up being like the main characters of the
Mm.
last third of the movie almost. It's
Yeah,
very strange.
very, very weird stuff in there. Um, the, um what did I wanna say? Oh, when they get to the, swapping of the brains,
Right.
um, I there's a couple of things I wanna point out. First of all, great sound effects when they're cutting
Yeah,
the head
good
open.
call. Terribly
They do
real.
some great stuff of showing the head and the blade of the saw touching the head, and then they pan up to this look of concentration as he starts to saw, and there's just this great sound.
It's very, very realistic sounding.
But then after he puts the brain in and, he takes the brain from the crazy guy and puts it in the new body and puts the skull cap back on, the top of the skull back on. There's then this very serious scene where in order to cure the insanity, he's gonna have to drill through the top of the skull
Yeah,
very
he
carefully.
has to tree pan the guy.
Yeah, drill through very carefully, but not go too deep into the brain. He has to release the pressure, but not go too deep into the brain. Here's where the science falls apart for me.
I'm starting to I
You've
know where you're
just
going.
had the top of the skull off,
Make the whole yeah.
which would I would think would release the pressure right there,
You
taking the
think
top of your
you think
skull
that
off
would be yeah,
would release a lot of pressure inside your skull.
yeah,
Oh, but if you need if you I'll grant that after you put the brain in and put the top back on, that maybe some pressure would build up and you need a hole there to release the pressure
yeah.
like on a pressure cooker.
Okay.
Drill the hole before putting the top of the head back on.
I think you make a really valid point.
And I that scientifically, I
Who
think
knew
that's
that
where
plumbing school was gonna pay off
yeah,
for you this much?
there you go. Um, and the other thing that I love is that when after they put the top of the skull on, they have some sort of plasticky or plastery type thing on top of the head to hold everything in place.
Mhm.
And did you notice what was holding that on top of the guy's head?
I'm pretty convinced it was electrical tape.
It was black I think it was black gaffer's tape.
It was, yeah, black
Like, okay,
for electrical tape.
that's because that's
Yeah,
what they
they
use.
had that back then. They
Was
did. He invented a lot of things. He was ahead of his time.
Frankenstein
If
invented
only he had just marketed that, he would have saved himself a lot of trouble and
yeah.
gotten rich.
Then the other thing that I wanted to see is I thought it was really fascinating how when he is the first rooming house that he is in, which is sort of like a British men's club, a bunch of
Yeah.
bachelors. It bore a remarkable resemblance to Stephen Toast's Brothers Club in Toast of London.
Oh, you're true. That's true. Yes, it's true.
It's
Yes, a harumphy place.
a very harumphy, and I loved every one of those actors playing
They were
the bachelors
priceless.
in the club. It was
As well as all the characters here. I mean, there's such an array of faces. The inspector is a character I dearly
okay.
love.
There we go.
I mean, we have to talk about that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Uh,
Just watching him use the snuff
yeah.
box
And
alone.
not just talk about him, but well, first of all, you know that whole thing was added very late in the movie because they decided they needed some other comic plot line in it.
I didn't read that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it was all added later, and, even the name of the actor playing the inspector, Thorley Walters. Is that where
He is wonderful. He really is wonderful. Yeah.
they asked him to go over the top, and, he overshot it by
Yeah,
a
they
lot.
said jump, and he said, "How much over the top jumping do you want?"
Yeah. Just
It's amazing. Snuff work was outstanding.
the snuff work was great. He's terrific. I also thought that, I'm not sure which police sergeant it was, Windsor Davies or Alan Surtees, because they both played the police sergeant,
Yes.
but the suspicious police sergeant
In the
is
house? Who
in
comes
the
to the
house during the painting
Mhm.
is spectacular.
He's great. Yeah. I debated whether or not that was me. Whether that
Um,
was gonna be me in the movie or
oh,
not.
so we're getting to that
Well,
early?
you brought no, I we don't have to do it. I just said I'll set it up for later that I thought that might be me. Not who I picked though, I don't think.
I
Ultimately.
actually thought I would be the suspicious sergeant,
Oh
and
no, I thought for sure that you were the inspector's assistant who didn't want to go on the trip with the inspector.
okay,
Who was disappointed when he realized that they had to go on a trip together and he hates him so much.
okay, I'll take that. I actually made you Inspector Frisch.
No.
I thought you would have fun playing that role.
Okay. Well, I would do that. I would love to
Yeah.
play him, but I thought we were talking, who we were in real
Oh,
life.
well,
But
who
we could do both. I mean, I'm definitely I mean, in real life, I'm clearly Peter Cushing. But but in the context of who I might be asked to what character I'd play, I know that I read for the Freddie Jones character, but I didn't get it. I read for it. I humiliated myself.
he was wonderful.
Well, Freddie Jones is great. I love him. You
That
remember him
sh
from other stuff?
that shot of him when he first sees his wife, when he comes into the bedroom and the lighting, on his face. Can I ask a question? I don't know a
Yeah,
lot about cinematography.
I don't
Um,
either.
where is that light coming from? He's standing over his wife's bed looking down at her,
Yeah.
and she's holding a spotlight? Is that what I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure what
it's coming from a small kino that's underneath the bed,
like,
shining up. Yeah,
why
I don't know what you're
why is there a bright light shining directly maybe it's to symbolize how he feels when he looks at his wife.
well, why do certain props in the foreground glow with an illuminated fluorescent glow and others don't?
I don't know. I don't know anything.
But Freddie Jones, right? Great. Do you I've always liked him. Do you like his stuff from other
Yeah,
movies?
he's
I mean,
spectacular.
he's great in The Elephant Man and he's incredible in that movie. He's great in a Fellini movie called And the Ship Sails On, which is great. Not seen enough that movie.
What did you pick as the silliest moment in this entire movie? Because there was one moment for me that stood out head and shoulders above the rest.
There's a moment that I had to stop and pause, and I looked at Amelia, and we ran it back, and I
Did it
there
have anything to do with a newspaper?
no,
Oh, okay.
it had to do with the bed sheet.
Oh, alright.
Um, it was the angle of the camera. They okay. Peter Cushing brings the wife of the brain transplant into the dungeon,
Yeah.
and he's like, you can't see his face yet, but here's his body, and it's under a sheet. And it's when they're going to start communicating, maybe like she'll say, your wife is here, and he can only move his hand, right? He can move
Yeah.
his hand to say yes or no, whatever.
Okay, there we go.
And there's a shot, this wide shot, like low angle shot of the sheet, the guy on the sheet covering it on the bottom of the frame, and his face is up on the left side of the frame, and Cushing is leaning over him, and they're asking him questions, and he's signaling with his hand, but his
Yes,
hand is down
yes,
by his side.
yes, he is.
So I'd like you to imagine what that might look like if they had their arms stretched out to their side, and you were just looking at it from the side,
Yeah,
and they were moving their fingers up and down.
yeah,
Where about their hand might that be on the in your mind on the sheet there? And it really did look like he was communicating with a different part of his body, and I found that to be the silliest part of the movie. I love that. That was
yeah.
really funny.
It reminded me of there's a photograph that appeared on the front page of the art section of the New York Times many years ago when Dinner with Friends opened, and it's a shot from the end of the play, Lisa Emery and I sitting up in bed, having a very, very serious conversation.
Mhm.
But the photograph is taken from bed level from the audience. And so my foot is
Yes,
sticking
optical illusion.
up, but there's no depth of field
Right,
because it's
that's
just
it's
yeah.
foreshortened, of
So,
course,
yeah,
the
it's
camera
just
can't
this
see that.
this photograph
Right,
of us having a very serious conversation,
and
and there's this yeah,
lo and behold, the show
and
was a
and it's
hit.
like it's
People
my
just got tickets to that show.
you're not gonna believe it. It's my foot, ladies and gentlemen. That's all that was.
It was a
Um,
it's a famous, story in
it's
Broadway advertising.
yeah. Yeah. No, my the silliest moment to me was when the 2 women are talking about having seen Doctor Frankenstein. One of the women, the wife of the scientist who is now getting his brain transplanted, sees Doctor Frankenstein on the street, knows that her husband worked with him and then went crazy. She hasn't seen him in 5 years. She sees somebody on the street, looks an awful lot like Doctor Frankenstein, and then comes back and goes through old newspapers and finds a newspaper and is looking at it and says to her friend, "Look, look, it was him. I would recognize him anywhere from this Hirschfeld drawing,"
I know.
basically.
I know.
It's a bad pen and ink drawing in the newspaper of Dr.
Looked like a
Frankenstein that
complete
looks like a
caricature.
Hirschfeld caricature of Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
And she says it as if they're looking at a photograph. They're
Mhm.
like, "Yes, oh, good. Look,
Yeah.
it's him."
I like that we're there in Germany, but they're speaking English with British accents, but the paper's in German without
Yeah,
subtitles. So we don't get to know what the paper says, but I got that was a little confusing.
right.
I do
Um,
love very much as a silly thing, for whatever reason, this made me laugh hysterically, was they're escaping with the brain transplant body, the guy who has to be taken care of, and they're in a he's in the back of a horse-drawn carriage with the like guy wrapped up like a mummy with an intravenous tube into his face.
yeah, yeah,
And they obviously are just have guys like moving the wagon around. It's pretty ridiculous. This movie again has the same level of beautiful design and like props and stuff for the most like for 80% of it, and then 20 to 30% is like, are you kidding me? How did this go wrong?
yeah. Why did that happen? There were other silly things, when, when Simon Ward, who's the protege, the unwilling protege of Dr. Frankenstein, and he and his fiancée are trying to escape, and he says to her, he says, "I want you to go to the stable and harness the horses very quietly and then stay there." And she says, "But Carl, I can't. I don't know how." I was like, "Okay.
I don't know how to stay there.
I don't I don't know whether it was I don't know how to harness the horse." Like,
Yeah.
that's the big fly in the ointment. Um,
I will. Yes. You know what? Let's just say, in all seriousness, that her character was that was not really a character. Like you know, this was 1967. It's like, come on, guys. We're 10 years after the last one. We have the bodices and all the, all of that going on. Can we at least like give her a character to play? Not
no,
even a
no.
chance.
She does have that nice moment when they've buried the body in the backyard, and then there's the
Oh,
water
the
main
water main,
break,
but that's a crazy
the
scene.
crazy
I
scene and the
like that.
hand coming out.
That was
But
really
did you
creepy.
did you notice the shadow of the crew member or somebody when she's dragging the body to
Yes.
hide it, and then
Yes, we
there's
both did. We were
somebody,
like, eh,
there's a
didn't make it out of that shot.
yeah. Um, that was, but then they get to the rape scene. In case we weren't sure which side to come down on with Dr. Frankenstein, he just rapes her brutally.
It's a very messed up thing. Yeah. I mean, it's needs to be mentioned because the scene is you know why it's there. Here, but there's this backstory to this. This kind of interesting because I
Yeah,
don't know, you
tell
probably
that.
saw it. Because without context, it might leave a weird taste in your mouth about the whole thing, like Peter Cushing and everything. But
Right.
but the truth of the matter is that um, they were both kind of forced into it. Neither Peter Cushing nor Veronica Carlson wanted to do that scene. It
Yeah,
wasn't
nor the
in
director.
yeah, the director didn't want to do it. It wasn't in the original script. They had never signed on for it, but the company, for whatever reason, was demanding it, and they had some reason that they thought that that's what audiences wanted to see, and they just demanded that they shoot it. And apparently, it was a very uncomfortable and unpleasant day on the set, and they didn't even finish the scene. Apparently, they stopped shooting kind of without even getting everything, and just stopped, kind of disgusted by it,
Well,
and
he
moved
was
on.
supposed to rip her blouse off, and there were supposed to be fully exposed breasts, and he refused. He said, "I won't do that."
Right. Okay. Okay.
And it was apparently the distributor for the American audiences is what they were worried about, not the British. But they wanted that scene in there for the American audiences, because by now it's like 1969, and American audiences were going further than
I know it's such a misfire though, because it's like, I mean, that's simply crazy because it's like, what American audiences are just craving seeing more of the
a
rapes in
nice big
movies. I mean,
rape
it's like
scene.
there were movies that dealt with really, really brutal things that were starting to get made, but
Yeah.
in most cases they were at least trying to be a valid, truthful conversation about the situation rather than just like this. It's like they want a scene like that. I don't know what it is. I don't know
Well,
why. Just throw it
the
in there.
rape scene that somebody was saying, the rape scene in Bonnie and Clyde was a big hit. So let's
God, it really is bizarre, and I really can't stress enough how happy I was to hear that they were just really disgusted to have to do it, and that Peter Cushing, that's great that he refused to go
yeah,
further with it.
he drew a line and said no. And then
Every
and was very caring towards her, apparently. I mean, they
Yes, I
were
heard that.
really,
Everybody that I uh, read up on had nothing but glowing things to say about Cushing as a person. He was apparently very, very respected and loved guy. Carrie Fisher apparently said it was really hard to do those scenes because he was literally the most gentlemanly, sweet man she'd ever met. And then, you know, there he is as Grand Moff Tarkin. But man, when he wants to be evil,
oh
I
boy.
thought it was just Christopher Lee. I hadn't seen a lot of Peter Cushing being evil. Actually, I'd seen more of Van Helsing. So this was a
And
kind of
then
a surprise.
and then Christopher Lee, another guy who was the quintessential gentleman,
Yes, total
erudite
gentleman. Yeah,
erudite, cultured, an
cultured,
opera singer,
a
um,
war hero.
a war yeah, and there he goes playing these
Yeah.
crazy roles.
Well, I mean, the beauty to me, it's actually like incredibly beautiful to me. I gotta say, like, um, the fact that these movies have a lot of really elegant, beautiful things about them helps. I mean, if they were just trash, it would be a different story, maybe. But the fact that Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee showed up to take their work this seriously and committed to every scene they did, every action they did was thought through as an actor. It was real. It was. And what I read about it was that Peter Cushing's take on it was, that he thought that anything less would have been insulting to the audience, and it didn't matter whether that audience came to see a horror movie or something fancy.
Hmm,
He didn't want to insult them by not giving them the full his full attention, you know?
interesting.
Um, Also, obviously, I mean, they weren't getting a lot of work. It's when they started committing to these characters that they became superstars, really, so they were certainly rewarded for this. But I think so many people, until horror movies started getting a little bit more thoughtful respect, a lot of people just thought these were just ridiculous jokes.
Yeah. I gave a lot of thought to the recasting of this movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I did some. Who's your top? Well, how do you want to do this? You want to do
A character at a
characters?
time. What do you do? A character at a time.
Okay,
Dr. Frankenstein.
Baron Frankenstein. I'm gonna say. Well, I initially said that only Tom Hiddleston could play Peter Cushing,
Right.
but I'm
Okay.
gonna change it up a little bit because I actually would like to cast Adrian Brody in this part.
Oh, okay. I had Cumberbund Bumbersnatch. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, yeah,
All right. Are you gonna
Benedict
stay? Is that?
Cumberbatch.
Are you gonna commit? Are you committing to that choice?
You don't like
No,
Benedict
I'm just being a jerk.
Yeah, Benedict
I think
Cumberbatch.
this. I think in fact, this is exactly where I think Benedict Cumberbatch should be. I think I don't really need to see him try to be a great actor anymore. I want to see him go back to being Sherlock Holmes or play Peter Cushing parts
Yeah,
in ridiculous movies and be just a classy guy.
yeah.
That's where I would like to see him.
Well, he is playing Doctor Strange in the Marvel universe,
No, I
so
don't want to talk about that.
okay. Carl, the Simon Ward role, who do you have playing that?
Definitely Dane DeHaan.
I don't know Dane DeHaan.
I can't help
You
you.
can't help me. Okay. I went
No,
I
he's
went
a
with
he's a young actor. He was in movies that you
okay, I
haven't
went
seen.
with Timothy Chalamet.
Oh, well, similar vibe, except
Okay,
Dane DeHaan looks even more like Simon Ward, but that's the
alright,
same world. Yeah.
okay.
Somebody who looks broodingly off camera.
Yeah, okay. Anna?
Anna is Julia Stiles.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's funny, I went a similar not quite similar, but I thought I wanna cast somebody more powerful in that role, but
Hmm.
still having the, um Dakota Fanning I went with,
Oh, great. Okay. I like that.
okay.
I like that plenty.
The inspector?
The inspector, Paul Giamatti.
Okay, I went with Steve Carell, and, as, creature,
As the brain transplant,
the brain transplant, yeah.
I think Stellan Skarsgård.
Oh, okay. I went John C. Riley.
Oh, that's good too. John C. Reilly, who actually, that would be great because there's a little Easter egg there for you in Licorice Pizza because he plays he appears as Frankenstein in the movie Licorice Pizza.
Oh, okay. The Suspicious Sergeant?
That's mean. That's got to be me. I
That's
don't
you?
care. I want that part.
Okay, you should play that part, but I said Will Ferrell.
Oh,
It's the
Will Ferrell would be good.
but
Yeah, yeah.
and then as Ella, the wife of the creature, I
Didn't get.
think
Tell me
you didn't
who
go that far down?
didn't get that. Didn't get her.
I think it has to be Juliet Mills. It's the wife of the creature.
It almost was Juliet
It
Mills,
almost was
actually.
Juliet Mills. Yeah.
Yeah. Showing. Let's face it, no restraint whatsoever on the brakes. She didn't put the acting brakes on at all, like at any point.
I've never used that phrase, but I'm going to. The acting break.
Just didn't pump those brakes for a second. Not even a courtesy tap. Like if I'm tailgating, she just was acting as
At full
much as she
speed.
could.
Yeah. And do you have a title for the sequel?
Oh, I don't.
Yeah.
What would you call it?
Frankenstein Must Still Be Destroyed, because he just goes on and on. I came up with a way that I would like to watch this movie.
Please tell me.
Do you know about the Forever Hollywood Cemetery out here, and they have the screenings of movies in a
No.
cemetery? Yeah.
No.
And you bring a picnic dinner and a blanket, and you lay out in the cemetery, and they put up a screen, and you watch a movie.
Are they like old movies usually or
Usually,
classics?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great.
So watching this movie in a
That's
cemetery would
great.
be terrific.
I mean, my instinct is like out, like a drive-in would be a great place for this, but
Yeah.
that's perfect.
And the double feature?
I definitely want to see this movie with Pacific Heights, starring Matthew Modine and Michael Keaton. It's basically, this movie kind of is Pacific Heights in part of it, because so much of it deals with, this evil guy showing up in town and trying to find a place to live and renting your apartment, and he ruins the place and destroys their life, much like Michael Keaton in Pacific Heights. So that's my double bill. How about you?
Oh, I went a much more sort of obvious way. I paired it with Ex Machina.
Oh, okay.
To see the other side of
Right.
of this legend and a more modern take on it.
To see a more boring version of the story. Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I just wanted to see where you were on that.
Wow. Or the original, the Boris Karloff version, to see, the traditional versus the rehash.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I would really legitimately like to sit down and take a weekend and watch all the Frankenstein in a row.
You couldn't
all
do
the
it
Hammer Frankenstein.
All the Hammer you could.
Yeah, all the Hammer Frankenstein.
You'd have to take like a month in somewhere to watch all the.
I have a month and I'm in Brooklyn, so I'm going to do it.
I can't talk about Frankenstein monsters though without mentioning somebody who I think was one of the most brilliant Frankenstein creatures. Did you see any of Rory Kinnear's turn as Frankenstein's creature in the series Penny Dreadful?
No.
Brilliant. A brilliant take on that character. And in Penny Dreadful they go very deep into the much more what was conceived of in the novel, where the monster doesn't look like the Boris Karloff, but looks like a person who is scarred up and can pass in the real world as somebody who's just horribly disfigured and is struggling with this relationship with his creator. Why did you make me only to be shunned, Father? I'm not talking about our dad. I'm not having weird.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
I wasn't having a psychotic break.
You weren't having I was gonna check and see if you're okay.
I love getting back to those guys in the Bachelor guys. Do you know how they show up in the credits?
No, what are they named?
Norman Shelley as guest, smoking pipe. Michael Gover as guest, reading newspaper. George Belbin as guest, playing chess. I love this.
Yeah. When you think about it, Matthew, you got to admit those are the parts that we would have. We would get some one of those roles.
Oh, and they'd be fun. They looked like they were having a ball in
Yeah,
those
well,
roles.
I'm sure they were old friends. They were probably
Yeah,
all in a show together at the time. Who knows? They were all That's the great thing about these movies is that you could really think about that Stephen Toast part of it where, like, they shot this during the day, and then they went off to do, like, Edward III, in Scotland. They took a
yeah.
bus to Scotland to do, like, a night of theater. The
Ray
drinking
Bloody
the
Purchase.
drinking involved.
Oh my god.
I do wanna give a shout out, while we're talking about Frankenstein movies, to a movie I don't know if a lot of people saw, or even heard of. It came out in 2019. It's called Depraved by, a filmmaker I dig named Larry Fessenden, who's an actor and a movie maker. He's made a lot of horror movies. And this is, I think, his latest, maybe second to last film. And it's a riff on Frankenstein. It's a modernization of it. And
Depraved.
it's
Okay.
a indie movie, low budget, but they did a great job with what they had. It's really fun.
I will check that out. Well, I want to thank you for coming up with this month um of movies.
Oh,
I'm
well,
looking forward to the next two. This is a world I have not delved into, and I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad. I thought
Um,
you would, that based on, how fun these are for most actors that I know. Like, they're fun movies for actors to watch,
they're
you know.
candy bars.
They are. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I had an idea for another. Well, next month, of course, is just ruin Tony's life month,
Yeah, I'm gearing up.
Maudlin March.
Ugh.
But then, in looking for the movies to destroy your life, I came across a movie that I considered putting in next month, but then decided not to because it gave me an idea for another month. There's a movie I considered putting in next month, called Woman Times Seven with Shirley MacLaine. Do you know it?
Well, I do, because our dad's in it.
Our dad's in it, but I've never seen it. Have you
Oh,
seen it?
wow. I have a copy of it.
Yeah. Okay, I've never seen it. Um, and I decided, no, let's not put that in the rom-com month because it's got some rom-com elements from what I understand, but other parts of it are not rom-com-y
It's not
because it's
a
an
typical
anthology.
rom-com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea of a Shirley MacLaine playing 7 different roles in one movie, I thought, let's do a month of movies where actors play multiple roles in the
Oh,
same
that's a great
movie.
idea.
So we could do this. We could do Joe versus the Volcano, maybe where Meg Ryan plays 3 roles.
You do Dead Ringers.
Could do Dead, yeah. So there's a bunch of roles, a bunch of movies
That's a
we could
great
do,
idea.
yeah. So we'll get to that. But yeah, I have plans for you for next month. It's gonna be
I'm really dreading this, man.
yeah. No, I think we're
I
gonna
mean,
have fun.
because I don't know what you're doing. I don't know whether you're picking things that I'm gonna hate, or whether you're, like, picking stuff that you hope I'm gonna like. I don't know how you're doing.
Both. I'm picking things that I hope you're gonna like, and I suspect you're gonna hate. I'm picking a couple of things that I haven't seen,
Mhm.
that are in the rom-com genre
Okay.
that I don't know.
Alright.
One that I love dearly that I think you're gonna loathe, so you can crap all over my heart.
I may
Um,
surprise you. Who know?
you might.
Because I certainly don't have any. I love comedy, and I certainly love old classic romantic screwball comedies. And
Okay.
so I have a taste for those, and some of the new modern ones I've liked. So
Okay.
we'll
Well, then
see how it goes.
we'll see what happens.
27 Dresses, though.
No, that is not on, yeah,
Hard no.
hard pass, yeah.
Hard
Okay.
no.
So, next week, we jump into, The Curse of the Werewolf.
Really excited about this one. Really excited. I've never seen it. It was very hard to find, actually, for a long time. So
Uh-huh.
until recently was it available to me. And it stars somebody that we have some stories we could tell, actually, next show.
We do have a story we can tell.
So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, alright. So, join us, please, next week for The Curse of the Werewolf and more Hammer horror.
It's not going to stop. it's going to keep on hammering your face
You
until it's
got it.
done.
All right. Good night, everybody.